All right, do one more kind of like talking to your mic.
How you doing?
All right, I'm gonna do 3 claps and we're on. All right, helps me sync the audio and the video.
I see.
All right,
Got you, bro.
Steven, introduce yourself.
I am Steven. Last name's Deyoung. Big takeaway from my life is that I have a very troubled past. Was into a lot of drugs. Was a thief for quite some time. Come from a very broken family, and that has all changed.
Very good. Let's start with the gym stuff. We'll get into the heavier stuff as we go. How did you step into the gym, or the first time you entered the gym? What was that decision like? Why did you come into the gym?
Well, I don't know if you remember it at all, but it was 2 Christmases ago,
Okay.
and I wanted to get Emma a gym membership. Well, us, but the idea was I was going to get my wife Emma a Christmas present.
Nice.
So
And
I came in and I was like, "What's up?" And you were like, "Bro, if you're just trying to come in and stick your headphones in and tune the world out, this is not the place.
yeah,
We like to get it in together."
yeah, for sure.
Yep.
And how has the gym as far as you impacted you in your life?
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, obviously, I haven't really been putting as much effort into it until I'd say December of last year, actually. Um, so I don't really have a long-term answer to that. Short term, I'm really enjoying it. I've wanted to, I'm sure like everybody else, work out pretty much for the last 5 or 6 years. I've wanted to do it seriously. I did it a little bit. I used to live and work on a farm in Lewisburg for a good 3 years, and there was a bit of a garage gym there that I worked out with the owner of that farm, but it wasn't anything, wasn't as consistent of a regimen.
Yeah, for sure.
So no, being in this environment has very much helped. Yeah, even in the last 3 months. Yeah,
yeah, you've been super consistent lately.
I've been doing the best I can.
Yeah, it's good,
man.
It's good. So I guess let's take it to the childhood, to the beginning.
Okay.
You mentioned,
Yeah.
you were very open with your opening
Yeah,
monologue
man.
there.
Yep, absolutely.
You have a past. So let's get into the childhood, I guess.
Yeah.
How was that growing up? Take me through the dynamic, and feel free, dude. Like, we got a podcast. I'd like it to be as long as possible. So the more you talk, the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, man. Not a good childhood. Parents did the absolute best they could, but just not a good dynamic there.
Why not?
One of my parents has openly admitted they got married because they just felt like it was about that time. That was about it. I don't really think there was ever any true feeling of being in love between the two of them. I don't. I honestly, I don't even know how my parents met, to tell you the truth. I really don't. I've never asked them that. But there just was no. I mean, kind of fast forwarding a bit from them meeting initially, there was no teamwork. Never saw my parents parent. There was just a. It's fine.
Yeah.
There was just a very a strange dynamic between the two of them, and of course they did get divorced when I was 15. That was more so just a product of the environment that I grew up in. I can't really say that that's why I got into what I did. I really can't tell you other than just timing. Go ahead.
Did you feel like maybe that they? So how was the dynamic between the two? Was it a loving household, or was it a household that was very like spiteful towards each other, and it just kind of rubbed off on you? Is that kind of the dynamic?
Yeah, I'm sure that played a part of it. I didn't think about how their dynamic affected me. If anything, it probably was just an absence of love. I won't say that I grew up in a hostile home.
Okay.
As I got older and I started making poor choices, there was a bit of animosity between my parents and I. But no, I mean, I didn't grow up in like a physically abusive household. It was mostly just they did not love each other. And go ahead.
And do you feel like that they maybe didn't show you any of that love as well, just because it was so hot? I'm not going to say like no love at all.
I think it was hard.
Okay.
I think as parents, they wanted to love their child, and they did. But I think that they were just strangled because their love for each other wasn't there, so they didn't have a place to love from, right?
And in that moment, were they miserable with each other? Like because they
did a good job of hiding it.
Oh, okay.
They did a good job of hiding it. And I mean, obviously, as a kid, well, I say obviously. I feel like it's obviously as a kid, you're a little bit, and I'll put it this way, until your parents really teach you what life and love looks like, you don't know.
Yeah.
And so obviously I was around families that in some capacity reflected my family. And so to a degree, I just didn't know anything different than what I saw. So in essence, I'm sure that it rubbed off on me. And I think that's a really good observation. I think what ended up happening with me personally is that I'm a very you can ask my wife this, like if I don't like something, I will do everything in my power to fix it, like 2 seconds before the problem happened. And I'm not boasting about that. I'm not trying to say it's necessarily a good thing. My point is, as a kid, when there was that absence of love, I don't really think I ever tried to get it from them. I just started trying to find whatever would make me feel that feeling. I think so. That's probably the part that they played in it or didn't play in it.
And how was your individual relationships versus your mom and
Yeah,
with your dad? Like,
yeah,
take me individually with both. How was those
of
relationships?
course, yeah. So my mom and I would say, I I don't think that, my mother did a very good job of not playing favorites with her children. She
And
did a very good
how
job of
many
it.
siblings?
Four.
Okay.
I'm one of four.
And are you oldest, youngest?
I'm the oldest of
Oh,
three boys and a girl, including myself.
okay.
And but I was very close to my mother between the two of them. I wouldn't, it wasn't this kind of dynamic that you sometimes see perhaps between, a father and his son or a mother and their daughter. It wasn't like that best friend vibe, but at the same time, like I kind of went to my mother for most things. And unfortunately, where that became a negative thing is when, especially in my middle teen to later teen years, it was mostly a dad pissed me off. I'm going to go complain to mom.
Yeah, right.
And mom's not a fan of dad. So we're just,
We'll
yeah.
have a little hate group on that for
Now,
a second.
my dad and my relationship could not have been worse.
Okay.
We spent a good 7 years just arguing with each other. And quite frankly, I don't know why he did it. I think it was just because the fact that his oldest son was constantly challenging and pissed him off. But my dad had his own struggles in his past that he's open about as well. My dad was in the Air Force for I think 10 years. He was stationed in Korea for 8. And he was an alcoholic during, I think, the majority of that time, if not all of it. And I have a very bad temper, and I get that from my dad. But by the time that he was, just to put things into perspective, I just turned 30 in February, and my dad was 30 when I was born. So around the time that he had got to, my age now, he had gotten a lot of that under control. So I never really saw my dad. My dad never physically abused me, and quite frankly, he rarely, if ever, raised his voice with me. But I just like to argue with him.
Hmm. What do you think that was?
Uh, it was, I mean, there was definitely kind of like that primal, like I'm going to challenge my dad part, partially.
Yeah.
But some of it, honestly, not to get like too, how do I want to put this? I don't want to be melodramatic, but at the same time, looking back, I really do think it was me just wanting to be heard. Yeah, I think I was trying to, in an ironic way, I think I was trying to challenge my dad to get him to approve of me, if that makes sense. So you'll have to forgive me, my eyes like
Yeah, for
swollen
sure.
or
But
something.
and how was how was your dad's relationship with his dad?
Bad.
Bad too.
Yeah, I mean, as he's my dad's turning 60 in August, and in the last 3 or 4 years, I think he's had more time to and see. I ought to interject this now, even though we haven't got to this. And I'd love to circle back around to why this is this way. But my dad and I don't have probably what is the average father-son relationship at this point. It's still fractured in a lot of ways, but we respect each other to a degree. So bearing that in mind, because of that, I think he's had enough of an opportunity to reflect on, okay, this is my son, and now I'm growing somewhat close to him. This is hard. What kind of struggles did my grandpa, whom I've never met, my grandfather passed, that grandpa passed a year before I was born. But, basically, I'm Stephen, dad's Rick, his dad is also Rick, went by Dick. So Rick was probably thinking, my dad probably had it a lot harder than I gave him credit for. So in my earlier years, I couldn't really speak to it from experience, but in my earlier years, I heard a lot about how my grandfather was just very rough. I never heard my dad call him abusive, but all the stories that he would tell me just kind of centered around almost like this tension in the best sense, or like just disappointment almost. Like it's almost like I think he felt like his father was constantly disappointed with him. And so I think that caused him to paint a very negative picture of him. But I have seen him change a bit when we've talked about him in the last couple of years, to where I think it's more of that mutual, like, hey, Rick's a man, Dick was a man.
Yeah.
And from that perspective, he's like, yeah, this junk ain't easy.
Yeah, for
Having
sure.
a son is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And going back to how you were as a child with your dad,
Yeah.
and your dad, you said his dad was very strict on him. It was the approval thing was something he was always searching for. And then, you're a kid. I'm not blaming this on you at all,
Yeah.
but like the fact that you guys were nagging each other all the time, it just felt like he was always searching for that approval too. And it just like, it's kind of
Well, and I think he went to the other extreme, because where I think that his dad perhaps because I do get the feeling that my grandfather was the kind of man that expected something out of his son.
Okay.
My dad, I think, went the complete opposite direction.
Oh.
Until my basically early 20s, there was no relationship really between my dad and I, other than just arguing. And so my point is, it's almost like he went to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, in which there was no expectations. And that probably, now that I'm thinking about it, had a lot to do with why I got into what I got into, because I almost felt like I had no pressure. You know what I'm saying? To be better than I was. And see, kind of unfortunately for me, up until I was, this is nothing to brag about, because it's not like I'm going to say a particularly long period of my life, but up until like I was about 9, I was the golden kid. I was super well behaved, got good grades in school, and the good grades persisted through middle school and whatnot. But not to get off on too much of a rabbit trail, basically what I'm saying is, yeah, I think that his, obviously what you're observing is right. The trouble dynamic that my grandfather had with my dad was passed down to us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. All right, so we're up into the point where you're like 15 now. When does the drug abuse start, and why does it start? Or like, what's the first decision to like, all right, I'm doing this, and how did that go?
Drugs specifically was around that time. I actually started drinking when I was about 10, and I'm going to keep probably gravitating back towards this idea that it was probably me trying to feel like that feeling of love. Just trying to find something that would make me feel that way. And I think initially, because one thing that I didn't say earlier is that, and it was for no reason other than it just kind of slips my mind.
Yeah.
But especially, I say that I was the golden child, but actually I was a freaking chronic liar as a young kid too. I was terrible. I mean, like, just my mind was not right. Like, I would take these massive toys. This is terrible. Nobody wants to hear this.
Yeah.
But I would take these massive toys and throw them at, like, this is the dumbest thing that you've heard in a while. Throw them at my parents' bedroom wall and then blame my younger brother.
What was that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. I think, again, it was just me trying to get attention.
Yeah.
Probably a sense of wanting to be a little bit manipulative, but I don't know that that was what it was. I think, honestly, it was just this notion in me that I had to have someone's attention on me. I've always wanted to feel like I was kind of controlling, yes, but not really. It's almost just like I wanted to spin a top and watch it go. So anyway, putting that there, I just kind of wanted to gravitate towards whoever made me feel like I meant something, I guess. And so, combine the lying, and it was mostly an internal thing. If we get to the point where we're talking about kind of what that transition looked like from, who I was to who I am now in more detail, I mean, it was bad, man. I don't want to get too far ahead, but there's really no way to put it other than my mind was warped. Like, I couldn't think straight. So I just wanted to be around people that I felt like I had some camaraderie with, and all that to say, the short answer is I actually did competitive gymnastics and competitive dance, and the gym that we went to is what they called it. All of my siblings did it in some capacity, but the gym that we were members of, the owner's sister had a son who was about 4 years older than me, so I'm 10, and he had friends that were 4 years older than him. So I'm a 10 and 11, 12-year-old hanging out with, 18, 19, 20-year-olds.
Mm.
And also his family, everybody could drink. They didn't care. I mean, the
I got
drinking
you.
happened at their house. And so in that regard, I guess it was the whole, like, if you're going to do it,
It
do
was
it
a
here.
controlled environment,
I
Right.
guess.
Oh.
But, I mean, yeah, it was a controlled environment in the sense that their kids weren't out. But at the same time, like, it was too much. And they didn't need all these colleges.
So
Yeah.
you started drinking because you were getting some.
Honestly, I just got
with.
exposed to it and I got the attention.
Yeah. You
Like,
had a group to.
Yeah.
You had a group. Mm.
Yep.
All right. So you started drinking, and how did
Yep.
that make you feel when you? I mean, of course, you're feeling like you're a part of something. You're something bigger than yourself.
I
got
have a
friends.
really ridiculous tolerance to alcohol.
Okay.
I don't, to this day, at this point, I'm not a fan of drinking. That's not to say that I won't occasionally if I feel like it's, appropriate in whatever context I'm in. But even to this day, I have a very high tolerance. And so, like, even as a 10-year-old, like, I just had a very braggadocious attitude about it. Like, I mean, as a 10, 11, 12-year-old, I sound like an idiot. But I could literally drink more than the people around me and act less stupid. So, it made me feel like alcohol would make one feel as a depressant, but at the same time, it kind of gave me, again, it was like, okay, cool, I can puff my chest out now because I'm getting attention because, hey, I'm a little kid and, here's these girls that I think are cute and here's these guys that are my friends and I'm out drinking them. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we're at the drinking phase now, and when does it get to take a step deeper?
I just drank for a while.
Okay.
And then I don't think initially I lived in the same neighborhood as that kid, but at some point I did. And so I would just go and, like, basically I spent all my time at his house as often as I could. And this is probably where the emotional dynamic in my life started to shatter because I was just pathetic. I'm not being too hard on myself. I really just was, like, in the most literal sense of the word. I was a basket case really as a little kid because I'm lying to myself all the time. So in my mind, I'm like, this guy's my best friend, and, like, I think that I've got something. And I remember asking one time, I was like, hey man, who's your best friend? And he was like, oh, this other guy. And I was just, like, devastated. And so that's where I think I just became more corrupted internally. And so at that point, that's kind of when it became about substance abuse. It was no longer just these people are doing it. It was, well, this is the only thing that makes me feel good anymore. So to answer your question, when he left, like, for college or whatever, so when I was about 14, that's when I kind of gravitated towards a different group.
I got you. And you say your mind was warped and you
Yeah,
lied
yeah.
to yourself. Did you have an internal thought that maybe, like, that you were lying to yourself, or were you honestly believing this?
No, I believed it.
You
Hook, line, and
believed it.
sinker. Yeah, man. Yeah, because
Okay.
I didn't have any accountability. Kind of going back to what I was saying with my dad, not really, like, expecting me to be anybody as a man. That was another big thing, learning what it meant to be a man. But yeah, no, and I guess it's that partnering dynamic right there. This believing all the lies that I'm telling myself and having a warped mind. Like, I mean, no, man. I just really, I was not in touch with reality whatsoever.
Oh, wow. So your friend goes to college. You start hanging out with a different group.
Yes.
And you're in high school at this point, about you're 14, you're 15, something like this.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up, by the way?
Youngsville. Youngsville and Wake Forest.
Oh,
North
wow.
Carolina.
Okay,
Yeah,
right here. Yeah.
I'm a native to North Carolina.
Here.
Yep.
Okay, so, yeah, your friend goes to college. You're finding acceptance.
And then I just fell in more with the wrong people again.
Yeah.
In school, for me, it was a big thing about wanting to be popular, which I know it is for everybody to a degree, unless you're, grounded, but I wasn't. And so, I just, once again, fell in with the wrong people. And I just wanted to, now at this point, I really did want to, abuse substances because I did like that kind of, like, well, if life's going to suck, at least it can feel good while it sucks, which is, why probably a lot of people are in addiction problems.
Right.
So anyway, then I just got around weed, and I'll just kind of go really quick and then do with it what you want. But I was a pothead. I don't remember when I seriously got into smoking weed, but when I hit the ground running, I did. There was, going back when I was about 15, through through hanging out with this person who hung out with this person, I hung out with this one girl for about 2 years that I had a lot of affections for. And I think mostly she just was a little too loose of a person, quite frankly, to want to commit to one person specifically. And so she was just, God love her. I'm not trying to condemn anybody here, but
I get what you're getting at.
and
I get
honestly,
what you're saying.
like fast forwarding,
you.
fast forwarding, just for what it's worth, is like a little aside. I actually messaged her at one point on Facebook once I got my life straight, and I was just like, "Yo, I'm so sorry. I was not a good influence on you." Because I meant it. I was like, I should have been a good man. I should have done this. And she was like, "Are you kidding me? I was the one who sucked as an influence." So out of her own mouth, she wanted to do everything wrong that she possibly could, and unfortunately her parents ended up actually like escalating it to the point where she got sent to like, I don't know, like military boot camp or whatever, something like that. So I just hung out with her in the crowds that she ran with for about 2 years, and I don't remember if I got into anything heavy at that point. I remember doing some fake heavy drugs. I don't know how else to put it without getting into like too much just stuff that nobody wants to talk about, but basically, like, I don't know anybody that doesn't know that like at certain gas stations, at least like 10 years ago, they would sell like marijuana substitutes. Well, there were other substitutes for other drugs, and I remember doing that. So if I did anything heavier at that point, I don't remember. But basically between 15 to 18 through her and then some other friend groups, and the last friend group is where I got really jacked up. That's where I started dealing a little bit. And it got so bad, man, that I used to, unfortunately, anybody that's been in substance abuse already knows what I'm talking about. It's Coricidin, cough and cold, triple C's, DXM, robotripping. I used to steal cough medicine and take like 36 pills, like 3 sheets of those pills, just to get high. So that was kind of the dynamic of my life in this last stage, drinking, this girl, and then these people. And that was just a mess. I had way too much freedom, and we'll get into as much of that as you do or don't want. But long story short, when it was all said and done, I've pretty much done most drugs that someone can do. I was a pothead the whole time. I was very heavily into opiates as well. I did psychedelics as often as I could. Anytime that I could get my hands on coke, I would do it. And I've snorted heroin. I didn't do meth. I didn't do crack. But other than that, I've kind of run the gamut. Yeah.
All right, your parents divorced at what age?
When I was 15.
When you're 15, and then where did you start living at that moment? Was it with your mom? Was it with your dad?
I think
did you split the time?
I briefly lived with my mother, and see, that was the strange thing. And see, this is where this kind of like eerie amount of irresponsible freedom creeps in, because the rest of my siblings, at least for a time, I believe, were going in between households.
Okay. Was it on a routine schedule, or was it just whenever?
But that was just as far as I remember. And granted, I mean, after a certain point, I basically just phased everybody out. I mean, I was sneaking out. I was breaking into the houses that my parents used to own. Like 17 and 18, I don't really remember.
Yeah.
But bearing that in mind, I lived with my mom for a time. And then I kind of just, I guess, this is where, unfortunately, that lack of a relationship that ever developed with my parents began to shine. Because it's like nobody held me accountable. Nobody had any standards for me. Yeah, one of my parents would get mad at me for the decisions that I made, and yeah, the other one would try to act like a disciplinarian, but really I just did whatever. So I think I lived with my mom briefly, and then somehow I talked my way into living with my dad for the next couple of years.
And are your siblings witnessing you go through all this? Are they noticing?
From a distance.
Okay. What do you mean from a distance? Because if they sometimes come to your mom and sometimes come to your dad, I guess if you're free and doing whatever you want, I'm sure you're not home a lot, right?
Hey, Dad, I'm going over to do homework at so-and-so's.
Yeah.
Now, I opened up to a degree, I think, to my brothers. I don't know how much my sister did and didn't know. I influenced one of my brothers to actually, unfortunately, for a time, dabble with getting stoned. And then the other one, again, just kind of a little comedic aside, just so it's not so heavy of a conversation. But one time, I don't remember why, but I mean, obviously, we all know why, but I don't remember what the exact instance was. My mom wanted to drug test me, and so I told one of my brothers, I said, Kevin, Mom wants to drug test me, and I just smoked a cigarette the other day, so I'm going to fail.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in that regard, he knew. But other than that, I wasn't really ever around them. And if I was, to a degree, for a while, I was good at concealing it. But then when I got more and more detached from my family, I'm sure that it started to bleed through a bit. And then, I mean, when you start catching misdemeanors and stuff, like, I mean, so
Yeah,
yeah, no, from a distance, just because, quite literally, when they came, I think it'd be for a weekend. I don't think it was ever for a week.
I
And
got
so
you.
they would see me for a very brief period of time if they did.
Yeah,
And then just kind of going along with this whole, being a chronic liar, I'm not going to say that I knew how to put a face on, but at the same time, I guess I did. I don't know how else to put it. Like I couldn't put a happy demeanor on, but I knew how to change the subject. Put it that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. You're going through this heavy stuff,
Okay.
and what are some kind of the now looking back on it,
Mm.
I guess what are some of the some of the things that you're super sorry. I mean, you don't have to go in super
No,
detail,
you're
but
good, bro. I don't
yeah,
care
yeah, sorry. But what are some of the things that haunt
that I'm
you?
remorseful
Yeah, that
about.
you're I mean, I'm sure you're remorseful about the whole thing, but I'm sure there are some
Well, not to be
minor,
weird, although the
yeah,
beautiful thing is, and this is where, uh, and I'm not here to proselytize anybody,
yeah,
but who I am at this point is completely and totally rooted in my belief system, specifically my relationship with Jesus. So, in terms of where I'm at now, in terms of a state of remorse or regret or whatever, it's taken a long time, but actually, I don't feel that way anymore. And yeah, part of it, one could make the argument time heals all wounds. I, I would not tend to agree with that statement, but at the same time, yeah, sure. We're talking about when I was 15. I'm now 30. It's been 15 years. What am I going to do? Cry for the rest of my life? I mean,
right,
I didn't kill anybody. I
yeah,
just made some terrible decisions. Um, well, I didn't directly kill anybody. Unfortunately, this is just coming up. So this is probably actually an accidental answer to your question. I don't know how connected these instances were. I've actually never said this in public, but there was my friend had a bong um, that basically he had a bong. Me and his brother went and smoked with it. We were smoking on a golf course in Wakefield Plantation, and I guess somebody just came up on a golf cart, but we ran, and when we went back, the bong was gone. So we had just recently gone to this guy's house, and it gets bad, man. I have a very, very abysmal dark past. I was a horrible person, but I actually broke into this guy's house, climbed in through his window, took his bong, took some cash, took some weed. Um, the incredibly gut wrenching thing that I'm about to say is that whether it was directly related to that or not, unfortunately, that young man took his life about a month later. That's probably the most dramatic thing. And that one, I lament because there's loss of life involved. I guess the thing that I regret the most, if I had to make an assessment, because I mean, I'll go into whatever great detail we need to about the terrible things that I've done,
no,
just for the sake of like, that's where he was, and hopefully look at where he is now. I have no problem doing that. But I guess one of the things that I wish I could have done better was I wish I knew what I was so upset about feeling like I didn't have a purpose in life. But I was the eldest son. I was the oldest brother. I was smart. There's just so many things that I could have been. And that one's taken a while for me to get over. So yeah, that's the short answer to that without going off on a rabbit trail.
for sure,
Just wasted.
potential.
Yeah, wasted. Yes, wasted potential, but I just wasted so much time complaining about I'm not this and I'm not that. And I spent so much time complaining that I completely neglected what I was. Right?
Right.
Like I could have loved my siblings. In the midst of my parents not getting along, I could have been, a source of security for them. I could have been a good example. Or, I don't know what I could have done because I was a kid as far as my parents are concerned, but at the same time, perhaps instead of just kind of goading them on at times, like I would try to inject myself into the arguments. I remember one time specifically where I just like I hated that they were fighting and I got involved and one of my parents was like, who do you think you are and blah blah blah. So I guess if I just would have realized what I was instead of lamenting what I wasn't, I could have made a much bigger impact on my family.
All right, getting out of that phase of your life.
Okay.
When did you start phasing out? When was it you started having the thoughts of all these things? I have all this potential. I'm not living my life the right way.
So those are two different things.
Okay.
Um, I still I was complaining to Emma on the way up here about my low. This is not a soapbox. This is not melodramatic. This is an issue that I have to this day. Uh, I don't know that I'd call it low self-esteem, but if that's the right way to put it, then I'll put it that way. Um, I've come to embrace some of the things that I've accomplished in the last 10 years, but there was never a point where I was like, hey, man, I'm worth more than this. I've got more to live for. It's quite the opposite. It was just, dude, life sucks. Like, does life have to suck this much? And I did have some pretty serious things happen. So stepping away from any emotional or spiritual or like really big things that happened, some, I don't know if you'd call it practical or physical things that happened. My when I was attempting to deal drugs, I had an ounce that was fronted to me. I hate that we all know. Most of us might know what this means, but anyway, I had an ounce that was fronted to me. I don't know if this is an inappropriate topic. If
No.
it is, just stop me. But I had an ounce that was fronted to me by somebody that I went to school with, and I had hidden it in two separate places in my house. And I don't know if this happened back to back or what, but basically, I think both half ounces got found by my dad, and both half ounces got flushed. And my life, it had just gotten worse and worse and worse, and I guess interjecting a little bit of that, inappropriate freedom that I had. My dad eventually moved into an apartment in Wakefield, and he would go out of town frequently to go see his now wife, but at the time, he was seeing this woman that he had known from the Air Force in Virginia. Just to kind of paint a picture, I came to find out later on, just from some younger kids that came over in the neighborhood, that like my dad's apartment had become notorious for like, that's the place where people do drugs. So I mean, just like literally, it was bad, bro. I would have people on the phone, like, okay, my dad left, give it about 15 minutes, and then we would, be doing drugs. So, that, and there were some bad things that happened during that time. Like at one point, I think my stepsister's laptop got stolen from my dad's apartment, and my apartment got raided one time, and I mean, just bad things happened. And so that kind of kept escalating. But kind of the two things that really pressed in on me as a person in terms of like, wow, now this really sucks. And now my life has gotten really worse. There was never this like, I could be better. Unfortunately, it was just this, God, it was, people talk about self-fulfilling prophecy. That's really what it was, because I just talked so poorly about myself for so long that I became what I was saying about myself. So anyway, when my dad flushed the ounce, I think around that time, I was making comments like, I just want to kill myself, which that's something that I've struggled with on and off. In fact, Emma will tell you, even as recent as a couple months ago, there have been times where like, that was just kind of my emotional response to when things get too hard. Now, it's not something that I'm in danger of today, but back then, my dad thought it was, and so he actually called the cops, and I was admitted to Holly Hill Mental Hospital for a week, which I just ridiculed. I just made fun of it the whole time that I was there. I just said I got to take a vacation from life, because that was where this whole concept of me calling myself like warped came into play, because it's like I believed all the lies that I was telling myself, and looking back on it, I think I gave myself more credit than I needed to for this, and not to get too far off the beaten path, but I'm just saying, from where I'm standing now, what I know to be true is that it was the Spirit of God interceding on my behalf in those moments, and just kind of giving me glimpses of like, not I could be better, but this is not the way that it should be. And so that was the one instance, because, okay, cool. Now,
and this was in the mental hospital? Was you feeling this?
No, just
periodically?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes it was, so I won't get into there's definitely TMI. Not that I won't answer it, but I could get a little too far off, But basically, there were some behaviors that I wanted to participate in that were not good, that I just couldn't. Specifically, sleeping around. I don't know how else to put it. I think there was a lot of that negative self-talk, like, you're just ugly, that must be the problem, all this stuff. I couldn't do that. And there was just like this internal dynamic in me that was like, that's not a wise thing to do, that you shouldn't do that. So I would say that was the Lord, even when I didn't have any relationship with him whatsoever at all. And that's a very small way. I'd say the big ways are just like these moments where, it wasn't this idea of I could be more, but it was this idea of like, hey, your life does suck right now. However, there's a but. So yeah, I would just say sporadically, and then just to so I said there was two things. That's the one, Holly Hill. The other is I was at a buddy of mine's. This was after high school. I had graduated at this point, and right here is where this intersection really happens. And it's funny because it was never. It was people are very afraid of Bible thumping. I'm not ever going to be afraid because it's the person that I am. But at the same time, I want to be careful to make sure that people don't think that, I'm just listening to your questions and waiting for an opportunity to start talking about what I want to. So bearing that in mind, this is where Jesus really just grabbed a hold of my life and pulled me out of it. And I wasn't looking for, I wasn't looking for God. I wasn't looking for religion. I was just looking to be successful, and I actually wanted to have glass floors so that you could see through my glass floors and look at all my weed. But anyway, so I'm graduating from high school now. My dad's moved to Virginia. My mom's been in Charlotte for a while, and so I'm on my own as far as I can remember. I don't know if my dad was still here at this point.
Still in Youngsville?
No, I'm at Wake. If my dad's still here, I don't remember how quickly after I
Right.
graduated in 2011 that my dad moved. But as soon as my dad moved, I moved out to Old Wake Forest Road in Raleigh.
Okay.
So, but I left Youngsville probably when I was like 16, 17. In terms of living there, I was always kind of back and forth between Franklinton and Wake Forest, Raleigh, all that. But anyway, smoking with this guy that I used to do a lot of drugs with, and I was just smoking in a way that it generated a lot of smoke, and I inhaled a lot of smoke all at once, and I actually had heart palpitations. I don't remember the exact number because it was so long ago, but I don't think that I'm mistaken to say that my heart rate got up to 182. I was terrified that I was going to die. I'm an 18-year-old and my heart's going just because I'm smoking weed. And so I'm in my friend's room. And see, even that situation was sketch because we've locked the door in his room. His mom's home. It was just this really bad, like I was just in all sorts of stupid situations.
Right.
So anyway, I could go on and on about those. I've got one with my cousin in South Carolina where it was just, I was just not all there. But anyway, I leave the other kid's house that I was smoking with, and my heart starts acting up again. So I called an ambulance on myself. Ambulance comes and picks me up. I get admitted to the hospital for the evening. Literally, the firefighters that came when I called laughed at me, which I'm not trying to talk crap about the fire department. I'm not. I'm actually saying, like, that's how pitiful my life was. Like, they were just looking at this stone kid like, are you serious? And then, like, I was talking junk to the cops, and it was just bad. Because I was like, I'm trying to die here. Can you just, or no, I think I said, like, I feel like I'm going to die here. Can you just leave me alone? Like, it was just idiotic, man. So anyway, and then after that, anytime that I think I tried to smoke 3 or 4 times after that, it could have been more. I just remember it being like 3 or 4, and I just couldn't. I would just get scared. I would feel this, like, pain right here in my chest, and then I just get super paranoid. So I couldn't enjoy it anymore. I'm just going to keep talking.
Yeah.
So,
dude, it's your podcast. Yeah.
No, it's not.
No, yes, it is, because it's about you. It's not about
Whatever.
me. It's not about me.
Well, anyway, I've kind of lost track of the question that you asked me, but I think we're just kind of.
You were talking about the interjection of the two.
So we'll just run with that. So yeah, unless you have more questions about kind of the dark side of my past, at this point we are crossing over into where I am now.
Yes.
And so I used to work. I remember all this, and I'll tell you all the details in the world. I love this part.
Tell me all the details.
This is the good part.
Give it to me.
I don't know that you want all that, bro. We might be here until tomorrow night at 8 p.m. But yeah, man. I don't know if you or y'all go to Wake Forest much, but there's a Mediterranean restaurant out there, Charlie's Kebab Grill.
Okay. Never been.
Okay. Well, I worked with Charlie for on and off about 5 years, and it's funny that. I mean, it is and it's not funny. It's more ironic than anything. That friend that I was just talking about a second ago, or former friend, I don't have anything against the guy. It's just I haven't talked to him in like a decade. I wish him the best. But
shout out Charlie.
Well, no, this guy's name was actually Josh. But yeah,
shout out Josh.
shout out Charlie in a big way, yes. Because so what happened was Josh recommended that I go apply at Charlie's, and
Okay.
so I did. And man, I don't want to give man glory that God deserves, but God used that man in a big way in my life, dude. When he first interviewed me, and I love Charlie. I have so much love for Charlie. When he interviewed me, he just looked at me and he was like, "Do you smoke weed?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "You need to stop that." And so anyway, literally, praise God, man. If I get emotional at all, it'll be now. Because again, I just wanted to be successful, dude. I took jobs so that I could get stoned. And now at this point, I don't know if I just thought that I would be able to go back to it or what, but I guess my new obsession was, well, I'll just be successful and make money or whatever. Not because I thought I could. It's just I don't know what else I'm going to do. I'm 18. I don't have anybody telling me what to do. So, what the heck. But anyway, yeah, Charlie was like, well, he said this. Charlie introduced a lot of concepts to me that at the time just didn't make any sense. He was like, I like your heart. And that just didn't make sense to me. I didn't get it. Like, literally, I did not know what he meant by that. He also introduced to me this idea of, what it meant to be a man. And I remember one time, I still have the scar now. This is going to be a silly story, but I was opening a can of garbanzo beans and I cut the fire out of my finger. And I was like, I'm going to have to peace out and go to the hospital. And he was on the phone with me at the other store and he was like, just be a man and come over here. And like, when he would tell me this whole be a man thing, it would just really light me up because I was like, what do you mean be a man?
Yeah.
Well, I learned what he meant later on. But anyway, so I started working at Charlie's, and God bless that man, dude. Like, he was not in any way, shape, or form trying to evangelize me. He was just, he really believed in the, faith that he was raised in. He was raised in Lebanon, and he's no saint either. He'll tell you, like, his dad used to beat the fire out of him too. Like, it was bad, but he liked to cause trouble. And then he came over here and he didn't speak a lick of English. And eventually, just through perseverance and his faith, the story that I'll divulge a bit of the details of is public, but at the same time, it's not anything that anybody wants people talking about. But basically, there was a misunderstanding, and it truly was a misunderstanding. It truly was. But long story short, he had to spend a short period of time in jail. And he said during that time, and like I said, you can go Google it. But anyway, he said that he really clung to God in that period, and he read through the Bible twice. That was significant to him. I'm not saying everybody needs to, read through the Bible twice while they're in jail. Scripture is important, and people do need to read Scripture. But my main point is just that's what was significant to him. And so, like, through those trials and through his upbringing, he had an actual faith in God. And so he just really lived that out in the way that he loved me. He wasn't trying to. It was just the man that he was. And he was like, hey, bud. Like, it was to the point where he wasn't even that concerned about me. It was just like, it's who he was. And so he was like, if you ever need somebody to talk to, we can talk. So I eventually took him up on that offer. And I'll just kind of condense the next part just because I don't want to talk ceaselessly, but I want to talk more about it. So
talk as much as you want.
What I'd rather do is just say a little bit, and then you pick, whatever you want to talk about. But basically what happened is eventually I said, hey, man, I'd really like to talk. And I wanted him, again, I'm still searching for this, like, paternal, approval and affection. So I'm wanting him to be like, okay, we'll talk. He literally was like, I mean, you can come over to the house after work if you want. I was like,
yeah.
I mean, do you want me to? Yeah. So anyway, I went over there, and bro, I know I said I remember everything after this point, but at the same time, I was still kind of in my coming out of drugs phase, and so I don't remember it. But basically, I just asked him a bunch of questions about life that he didn't know the darn answer to, and he was like, buddy, I don't know what to tell you. I believe in God. That's what I got for you. Yeah. So, yeah, just praise God for that, because if it wouldn't have been for that man taking an interest in my life and just sharing that very small part of, and I mean, we grew to become very fast friends. I looked at Charlie as a father, not just as a father figure. I literally looked at him as a father for 2 to 3 years. And, I took care of his kids like they were my siblings, just very close to that family. And I was really close to all the people that I worked with up there for a time. But then once Jesus got a hold of my life enough, the people that I was working with were less and less interested in what I was wanting to be at that point. So anyway, I'm gonna actually finally take a sip of water.
Yeah, take a
I
sip of
opened
water.
it like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So anyway, the very abridged version, Chris, is that I went to the Walmart that I guess it was actually the Walmart that I got caught stealing at. But anyway, I went to a Walmart. I picked up a Bible, and I was living in Wake Forest at this time. It had been long enough. I had moved from Old Wake Forest Road out to a much nicer apartment. Might have heard about it through some of the people that came into the restaurant. Don't recall. But anyway, it was a really affordable. I can't remember what it's called, but it used to be a cotton mill. I think it was one of those places. So they turned it into an apartment complex. But anyway, living out there, and I got down on my knees, and to this day, I don't. This is significant to me. I mean, it's probably not significant to anybody else, but it's just to me, it's just how beautiful and amazing it was, because I know that in this moment, I was just like so caught up in what was taking place that it didn't matter how long it was taking. So I could have prayed for 15 seconds. I could have prayed for 2 hours. I could have prayed for 15 minutes. I don't remember. But anyway, I was basically just like, shout out to my wife at this point, because I'll tie her into this in a second. But the first prayer that I ever prayed to God, because still I look happier now, but I was just depressed at this point in my life, just dark, depressed, hated everything. We good? Okay. But I said, God, give me a reason to live, because I just felt like I wanted all the attention, so I got attention, but it was for all the wrong reasons. And so I just felt like I was this failure that was being watched. And so one of the worst things that ever happened, bro, was I got a birthday card from my grandma, and it said, "We just wish you were the way you used to be."
What?
Nobody wants to get that from their grandma, and dadgummit, she ought to have said that. She was the only person that ever, really kind of came close to trying to, I got fussed at for the stuff that I was doing, but nobody really ever took the time to say, "Hey, bud, like, what's the deal?" And so anyway, I'm not saying it's perfect, but it was just like, cool. Now my grandma doesn't even like me. I love my grandma. But anyway,
you're praying, and then you're going to tie him into the story.
Yeah,
and you're looking for purpose.
I will, but part of me wants to pump the brakes and see what you have to say. But yeah, just because I said I'd tie Emma into the story, so this is, I mean this, and this is for her.
Yeah.
But I told her this, and I'll tie her in later. How about that? Because it might come across as a bit too facetious right now. So that's where it all started.
Yeah, I don't
take the reins, brother.
Yeah, I don't really have much to say. I just enjoy hearing you talk, and I just like hearing your story from your version. I don't really have any questions, because the whole reason this podcast started was because we talked for a second on the air bike the other day.
Yeah.
And you mentioned your past.
Sure.
And I just need people. I mean, I don't need people, but I'd like to have people on the podcast, and I don't want people aren't like, "Hey, I want to get on the podcast," but I ask them, and then they'll jump on and tell their life story. One of my favorite things about the podcast is to share, because everybody has a past, man. Now,
Sure.
not everybody's past is the same, and I just want people to have a little compassion for other people, because a person may be a certain way, and you may not like this certain way that they are, but they're that way for a reason, and it's based on the life experiences, their parents, how they raised them, how their parents raised them. You know what I'm saying? It's like nobody's perfect, and nobody. And I want people to see that, and that we all come from something, and we're all just regular people, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
just take time to
absolutely.
get to understand some people, and it'll give you some more compassion about them, some more like give them grace, give them love. You know what I mean? So I'm enjoying.
I mean, I guess if I could sum up where I am now, and then we can either call it or we can keep talking. It's up to you. Just so that it's not all this, oh my God, it's bad stuff. And then he said something about Jesus. Yeah, man. I mean, I have an absolutely gorgeous wife. I have a community that loves me. I actually felt that sounds too loose. I don't know. The Lord gave me a conviction that I needed to go to Southeastern Seminary in downtown Wake Forest, which the reason that I can say it was from God is because I used to serve a lot of seminary students when I worked at Charlie's before and after I had that change in my life. And I just didn't want to go. It wasn't a negative thing. It's just like that was never an interest of mine. It's not like anybody ever offered me the opportunity and I was like, no, I didn't have any interest in it. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, skydiving is cool. I just don't really feel like doing it right this second. And so anyway, it was kind of the same thing. But one morning I woke up and I just had this like, I want to go. Like, I've got to go. And like my mind is going, bro, there's no way. Like, you can't afford it. Your family's not supporting you the way that you thought that they would when this whole Jesus thing happened. Like, it's just not going to happen. Literally, the only reason that I pursued it was, okay, I believe that God has given me this desire. And my whole thing when I became a Christian, because my dad had this little, and I put quotes on it because that's really all it was at the time, this little Christian period of his life. And I used to make fun of him to my friends when I was on drugs. I was like, yeah, now he prays before he eats a piece of cheese. Well, I mean, fast forward, I'm the one that's praying, now I've met Christ and I'm like, Lord, what shirt should I wear today? So, joke's on me. But anyway, the reason that I bring that up is because I just had I guess I didn't realize it, but I really did have a terrible taste in my mouth about Christianity. Like, I hated when my dad would play Christian music in the car because I was just like, dadgummit, all they do is say the same thing over and over and over. This sucks, and I'm a musician as well. Like, I play drums. I'm actually really good at drums. I've competed several times and won in different jazz competitions throughout the state. And I've learned to play piano, and I can sing, and I can pretty much fiddle around on any instrument. And I was in jazz band, and I was in concert band. So, the snobby, at the time snobby, now I'm not like that, but the snobby musician kid in me was like, bro, this ain't music. This sucks. They're just going, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. This is dumb. Yeah. And so anyway, like, my inner heart commitment, if you want to call it that, I don't know what to call it, was I'm going to live this. Like, I am not just going to say, okay, I'm a Christian and go to church. Like, either my life's going to get transformed or I'm just going to go back to doing whatever I can to have fun. So I say that to say this. I was like, okay, you're saying you want to believe in God. You're saying you want God to tell you what to do. You feel like he's telling you to go to this school. So if you're going to have faith, big boy, you have to at least try. Mm-hmm. So, whatever. If I can rabbit trail a bit, I will.
Keep going. So you go to the school.
So I'll detour a bit. I'll hang out here for a little bit. Mm-hmm. What's neat about this, Chris, is I didn't know if there was a right or wrong way to do the whole Jesus thing. I really didn't. I just knew I needed God's help because nobody else could help me. I'm not saying there weren't trained professionals that could have done something in my life to help me, but I'm just saying the people that had been in my life, in my family, in my friend groups, nobody could help me. So I just needed someone to help me. So I called out to God. And but I didn't have any, lens that I tried to view this through. I didn't, Charlie wasn't trying to teach me how to be a Christian, none of that. I just had this urge to read the Bible, so I did, and I read it voraciously. But that was, and don't get me wrong, I was seeing change in my life. I was seeing these new values, like being a man, and I was seeing myself finally take on an identity, just as an individual. And so, like, that was significant. But that was enough for me. Well, Scripture talks about it's rather prevalent in the New Testament, but specifically there's a verse in Galatians that talks about needing to walk by the Spirit. And I just began to feel, this is where I'll start to get out into left field for people that don't want to have anything to do with spirituality or Jesus.
Well, and if they don't want to, what they can do? They can cancel this episode and go to the next one. You know what I'm saying? Talk about what you want to talk about.
So, well, I respect that, bro.
For sure.
But anyway, I guess I'm mostly just saying that as a disclaimer. Like, if that's you, I'm still here for you.
Yeah.
So anyway, I began to feel the presence of God. I don't know how else to describe it other than it was just a feeling that I felt around my head. It was just this comforting presence. And I was like, okay, is this what the Bible means when it says walk in the Spirit? And I believe what God said back to me was yes. And so once that experience happened, and then, it was little trivial things. Like, one might think that I was joking about the whole, Lord, what should I wear today? And I wasn't obsessive, but I really did want God to take a hold of my life because I had failed at my life for 18 years. No matter what I tried to do, it just wasn't working. I wasn't getting the girls I wanted to. I wasn't feeling like I wanted to. I didn't have money. I didn't have nothing.
Right.
I had nothing and nobody to show for it. And so I just wanted him to take a hold of my life and do something with it. So anyway, just that giving a little bit of context. The reason the school thing is neat, and I was trying to paint, I guess you would say, a backdrop for once that element of my faith started to become a thing, it became much more of an experience. But even still, it's not like I was like, God, speak to me from the clouds or something like that. Because I was just like, my life used to suck, and now it doesn't.
Right.
And it didn't suck for the simplest reasons. Like literally colors became more vibrant. And like I was starting to be able to think, like all the things that I had failed to do since I was conscious, the Lord was starting to give me the ability to do, like even talking to people, man, like I kid you not, I could not have done this because I was just so afraid of what people were thinking about me. And so he was just giving me a spine. The Lord was giving me a backbone. The Lord was giving me a reason to live. So anyway, more on that in a second, possibly. But I used to go to this church in Wake Forest called North Wake. The music minister there, one of the sweetest men that I've ever met, phenomenal husband to his family. He's just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful pastor. Just an excellent family. There's nobody in the world that I would not send his way, even if they were just looking for a friend. But anyway, he would often, I might go to him from time to time. Once there was kind of a break in my ability to talk to Charlie about certain things, because whereas his faith was real, there was a certain intellectual element of it that he didn't care for, just because he wasn't interested in that. He didn't really care about all that. Whereas I'm not bragging about this. I'm just saying, like, sometimes it sucks, but I'm a thinky person. I think a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I needed stimulating conversations. Again, I didn't want it to just be, I said I'm a Christian, so I am one. Like, what about this? What about that? I really, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. So anyway, Daniel Creswell is the guy's name. I would talk to him from time to time, and all that to say, he was like, hey, bud, if you want, anytime you want to come up here, you can just play these drums. They're your drums. Matter of fact, that's what he said. They're your drums. So anyway, all that build up to say this, it's not going to be anticlimactic. It's actually pretty crazy. I went, and I'm sure most people have heard of him. I was listening to the Christian rapper Lecrae's album Gravity, and I was just jamming out on the drums and just really, and that was cool for me because I was good on drums before I met the Lord, but now it just was taking on new form. Like I'm playing drums, and I'm like, dude, God created me with this ability. Like, this is dope. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I'm playing, and I had a great time, and then, man, the only way that I can describe it back then and the way that I'll still describe it now is I walked outside of that parking lot. I can see it clear as day in my mind, and I just felt like something cut through the air. And the Lord said, go to the school. There will be somebody there to get you your transcripts. And I was like, I know that was God. And the reason that's significant, I should backtrack a little bit, is because in this process of applying for Southeastern, I was having trouble getting hold of my transcripts. I think I asked for them to be, my high school transcripts, I think I asked for them to be sent to me, just couldn't get them. I remember calling up one day to the school. I don't remember. Unfortunately, I really don't. And I'm not one to not want to give details because I don't want to be this guy that says, the Lord did this. And then it's like, I don't know how, though. But at any rate, basically what happened is I deduced from calling up to the school that the transcripts were at the school. And I guess what might have happened this particular day was like my break. Maybe it was a teacher work day or maybe it was during summer. I don't know. But basically, like, I was under the impression that when I had time to go up there after work, nobody was going to be there. So I just went to the church on my break because it was like 2 minutes down the road. And, I would work a 4-hour shift with Charlie, and then I'd have like a 3-4 hour break. It'd be 11 to like 2 and then 5 to 9, that kind of thing. So anyway, but I knew I needed to get back to work. And so I'm like, I know that was you, God. I know that was you, God. I know that was you, God. So I show up to Wakefield High School, Chris, and there's nobody there. There's like a driver's ed car leaving. And I'm like, I know it was you. So I walk up to the front door because I'm just determined.
Yeah.
I'm just determined. Like, I know this was you, God. So I pull on the front door. It's locked. Now I look to the side, and I guess a janitorial staff member or something had left it propped open, if I remember correctly. But basically, one of the doors was propped open. Now, in hindsight, this might have been trespassing.
Right.
But I didn't care, and I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just like, God told me to do something, dadgummit, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And so I walked in, still nobody. To this day, God is my witness. I don't have that lying problem anymore. God is my witness. I saw one physical person on that campus that I talked to that day. So anyway, I go into the school and I'm walking around. It's nobody. Anybody that's been in Wakefield High School, they've got this large mezzanine cafeteria area, whatever you call it. Nobody. I go up to the front office where I would have got my transcript, student services. Nobody. I go to this office. Nobody. I walk down this hall that I don't even remember having gone through before because I'm just praying like, Lord, where do I go? Like, I know that was you. Nobody. Now, this is where I did kind of start to get sketched out because I come up to this door and I don't remember exactly what it said, but I think on the other side it had a piece of paper taped to it that said stop. And so I'm like, okay, God, what do I do? I feel like you're telling me to walk out this door, but what if the cops get called and then the cops get called and I'm like, God told me to do something. Like, that's not a good way to start this whole relationship with God thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I walked through the door and Wakefield's got, no alarms went off, no cops came. But anyway, I walked through the back door, Chris, and they had 4 trailers. And you might hear Christians oftentimes talk about feeling led to do things. Some people don't like that language. I don't really know how else to put it. Basically, I was just praying and I had this conviction and I was, wanting to sense where I felt like the presence of God was leading me. So it's not just like I went, well, I used to have teachers in that trailer. Like, no, I literally felt like the Lord was pointing me in the direction of this one trailer in particular. So I go in there, and if I remember correctly, every light in the hallway was off except for one. And I go into that man's room. His name is Samuel Bliga. He was my, I believe, civics professor. And I got a kick out of him in high school because when the students were pissing him off, he's the kind of guy that would pick up that desk chair combo. I remember vividly, he threw it in the front of the room one time and he would throw erasers at people. Like, not crazy, but he just won't go put up with our crap.
Yeah.
And also, he was probably in his, if he's still alive, I'm not, I don't know. I believe he might have been in his 50s or 60s when he taught me, but God bless that man too, because this is where it gets super cool. So anyway, I go in there, and he kind of knew what was up when I was in his class because, he probably talked about, not bragging about it, just saying like he had been through doing opium and stuff. And he's just that cool teacher that everybody wants to have, that guy that's seen it, done it, all that stuff. But now he's turned a new leaf, but he can still relate to you. So anyway, God bless Samuel Bliga. But so I got to talking. Well, first off, I walk in there and he goes, it was kind of weird, but he goes, some things never change.
Yeah.
I didn't know what he meant by that, but I was just happy to see him. And so I got to talking with him. And he was like, so what are you doing? And I told him, I'm trying to do such and such. Told him about the transcripts, and he was like, well, I'll be. None of my students have ever gone on to be a minister or something like that. Anyway, so he was eating it up, and I think at that point I just started, because like I wanted to really be. I don't even knew that I was trying to do this at the time. But looking back, I wanted to be Christ-like. I didn't just want to run up in this man's room and go, yeah, that's cool. So God sent me on a mission. Are you going to give me my transcripts? Right. It was kind of like look, if God, is really doing this, then it's going to happen. So I'm just going to spend time with this man for a little bit and talk to him. And I don't remember if I asked him directly or not, but if somebody doesn't believe me, they can go fact check me. Samuel Bliga brought my transcripts to my job that Saturday. And I ran back out to my car and I called my dad, who, this is another little aside. This is just kind of funny. I like slap your knee, haha. Not really that funny, but my dad, I still couldn't stand my dad. And I was like 20 years old and I started to read the Bible. And I called him and I tell people this story all the time. I said, Dad, I do not want to talk to you, but the Bible says I have to honor my mother and father. It was the dumbest thing ever, man. But hey, a little something came of it. So, yeah. So at any rate, I called him and I said, Dad, these were my exact words, the God of the universe just spoke to me. Like, I was tripping, dog. Yeah. So, yeah, man, I guess I will just continue because you're being a really gracious host. So, yeah. Anyway, just a neat little aside, and that changed everything, man. Oh. Because
a lot of people would say,
please.
I don't say this.
No, please.
People believe it.
I'm a glutton for punishment when it comes to
coincidences, right? People are like, "Oh, that's just a coincidence." I'm in your camp. I'm like,
indisputably,
there is no way that's just
because
a coincidence.
It's not like I just said to myself, what if I go to the school? Like, people can call me a liar on this if they want, but I have nothing to gain. Like, Jesus didn't. The people that would accuse me of lying wouldn't believe that Jesus exists. But even if they did for a second, it's not like Jesus said, I'm going to write you a check if you tell everybody that I said this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So anyway, yeah, that was one of those, that's one of those instances where, and I have other ones, but that's one of the most concrete, indisputable evidences that I have of the God of all creation speaking directly to me about something that was important to me that I was doing for him because I felt like he had called me to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that faith, he was making it all fall into place. So yes. And I mean, then couple that with, and this is where my faith really, I believe, began to take root. Because you'll hear people say, you know, I'm cool with Jesus, but I'm not really interested in reading the Bible all the time, or I'm cool with Jesus, but I'm just really not interested in the church. I never fell into the first camp. I did fall into the second. I remember telling Charlie at one point, you know, I mean, I guess church is cool for some people. All those things are so necessary in a believer's life in the right mixture, dynamic frame. I don't know how to put it. But anyway, so, you know, I had been in church with some good believers, and like I said, I was reading the Bible, and I was meditating on the Bible, and I was watching it transform my life. But now I'm going to sit here and argue, you know, or not argue. I'm just going to say, you know, okay, God just told me to do something. So how do I go back to doing other stuff? Because I just had this conviction, like, okay, well, if he spoke to me about that, like, what's my excuse? I'm not saying this needs to be you or anybody else, but for me internally, it became, okay, if he spoke to me about that, what's going to be my excuse if I do something without asking him from now on?
Yeah.
Because, Chris, he really did like bring me out of darkness and make me want to be alive. And so it really was just this sense of like love and loyalty, and like I want to please God and I want to be rewarded for that. And so what was before merely just, you know, tell me what I can do, God, so I don't screw up, now becomes, holy crap, you're God. What do we do now? So anyway, and then it gets kind of odd because I did get into school and failed my first 2 classes because I was working 72-hour weeks. And again, just going back to this whole, I want to take it seriously. I don't just want to say one thing and do another. Scripture talks about be anxious for nothing, but by prayer and supplication, make all your requests known to God, and the peace that passes understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Now people are going to think, oh, well, that was interesting. Why is he saying that? Because, bro, the reason that I failed the classes is because I'd be working these 72-hour weeks, and I honestly just didn't have time to do my homework. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but, you know, I'm at the store from 9 to 9. I was getting into managing the store at this point, I believe. But at any rate, like, I was working hard. And so I would get to 9 o'clock, and I would put my effort in, and in class, man, I was there. Nobody participated as much as I did. But at the same time, it was like, okay, do I just sit up until 1 o'clock in the morning fretting over this paper trying to get it done, or not? And I'm not saying that not doing your homework is the Christian thing to do. I'm just saying my personal conviction at the time was I'm just going to do the best that I can. So what? Go ahead.
And eventually, I guess you had to make some sacrifices.
Well, what ended up happening is I actually,
because if you work 72 hours a week, let's see how much brain power you got after 72
sure
hours
enough.
a week. You know what I'm saying?
So basically what happened is I didn't go to school for the next 3 years.
Okay.
I did everything that I could, still wanting to be led by the Lord to get my life together. And, you know, at one point I was like, well, what if, you know, I work overnight and then I go to school during the day, and then I tried working overnight and I was like, I'll kill myself. Like, I can't have a full day and a full night. Like, your boy got to sleep at some point.
Yes.
But basically, I learned my main priority when I met the Lord was how to be a man and what that looked like and the responsibilities. And I know that, and, you know, I've said that now a few times, and I'm just now kind of tuning in what our society is saying is and isn't a man at this point. So that may or may not rub some people the wrong way. But basically what I'm talking about is, you know, as a biological male made in the image of God, what my responsibility was as a steward of his creation and what it looked like to be a protector and a defender and to be, you know, a source of truth and to just be a friend. So that was my main priority. And then it was like, okay, now you need to learn how to become an adult. And so, you know, I worked this job and I worked that job. that eventually culminated in me working at Chick-fil-A for a little while. That was a doozy. I was like, dadgummit, I never saw myself working at the Christian chicken store. But anyway, did that. Actually had the privilege of managing one for a little while, and I actually got the privilege of opening one. But I don't remember why I did it. I guess I just sensed that it was time to go back to school. I don't remember, because in my mind that was the goal the whole time. And when I was at Faith Baptist Church in Youngsville, and I did have some. Honestly, it was probably, in hindsight, it was more of an accountability partner. But I considered him a mentor at the time, and so he would check in on me, like, what are we doing about school, blah blah blah. But anyway, I reapplied to school, went to school for about a year. Then I had the opportunity. This is just where the Lord really just lit my life up, and some incredible things started to happen. Although I really will talk for hours if I get into all of them. So just kind of as I feel led. Namely, the catalyst for how I met Emma and how I've met Chris and Drina and why I'm in Creedmoor is I still being a bit conceited. I had applied, for these. I guess it was one class at the time, because by the grace of God, I had she's now deceased, unfortunately, as of a few months back. But my dad's mother, never had a relationship with her. My family did not have a good dynamic with my dad's mother at all, for one reason or another. But I was able, by God's grace, to rekindle that relationship. And I really just enjoyed that, getting to know her as my grandma and as a woman. And she also had a relationship with Jesus, so that camaraderie was cool. But she also contributed, not a lot, but she contributed some to my education. And she was like, look, I had some debt at the time. And she was like, I'd like for that debt to be gone before you take on, a full, whatever it's called, a full class roster. So sold my car, started walking everywhere, started riding a bike everywhere, but I got my debt gone. But anyway, I guess I was taking one class at the time, and the whole conceited thing that I said a second ago. So there was a poster somewhere in the school, and it was like, hey, do you want to be part of our contemporary worship band? And I was like, I can drum. They need me. Yeah. So anyway, the Lord was like, bro, you need them. So anyway, I joined this contemporary worship band, and that's actually where I met the friend of mine who became my best man at my wedding. But anyway, we got sent to do what they call a D Now, or at least they used to. It stands for Discipleship Now. It's like a youth thing. And the ministry coordinator, Chris Dickerson, I believe, he came back and he was like, good job, y'all, just kind of pep talking us. And I was like, hey, by the way, I'm studying theology. I'm getting a minor in preaching. So if you ever have any opportunities in that regard, I'd love to. And so anyway, I'll put that off to the side for a second. So summer of 2018, and I believe I went back to school in 2017. So I've been at Southeastern for a little bit. I had a good buddy of mine at the time. Just haven't talked to him in a while, but he's a good guy. His name is James Cottrell. He's been in the worship side of music for a lot longer than I have, whereas I was just kind of in the musician side of things. So he was looking for a drummer to go to Panama City Beach. There's a bookstore that many of us have heard of called Lifeway. And Lifeway is a large company that has camps, and they did this thing called Centrifuge. And I got to go work in Panama City Beach, teaching kids about the Bible and playing drums. So that was dope, and I got paid for it, and I got to live there for free. So that was cool. But so the reason that Chris Dickerson and all that is relevant is I go and do that. And I didn't know what I was going to do when I get back, man. I had moved out of my apartment. I had packed up my whole life in my little Volkswagen Jetta. Like, everything that I owned was in that mug. My wok, my espresso machine, I declare, man, it was all in there. And so I come back, and I had a couple good buddies. One of them was a guy I used to live with, and one of them was a guy that I had played music with that summer and got to know, and I stayed with his family for a couple of weeks. But I don't want to say that I was couch hopping for a few weeks, but, I was just being patient with, okay, God, what now? Because I'd seen all this internal growth, and it was like, all right, God, thank you so much. Are we going to, my impatient self was going, are we going to do anything with it? And God's going, of course, dude, I'm not an idiot. So anyway, we get back, and I'm like, what now, what now, what now? So Chris Dickerson, while I had actually preached at a retirement home off of Six Forks for a year consistently, and while I was in Panama City Beach, he happened to be about an hour down the road doing some other camp, which is mildly irrelevant. But Anyway, I don't want to lose people. So just to get to the point, he said, "You're doing great, and we'd love to send you to some other places." And I said, "Great." So he sent me to 3 churches when I got back. One was to sing and lead worship. 2 were to preach. And one of the churches that I preached at, the music minister at that church at the time, was like, "Hey, man, I've got a big lunch that I do every Sunday. Come join us. Tell us about you." Kind of similar to this. And so me, him, and 2 older ladies, one of them very near and dear to my heart. The other one also, but this first one kind of adopted me as her church grandson.
I gotcha.
She refers to me as her grandson, and she's my grandma, and she's just this sweet 92-year-old woman that can outwalk most of us and likes to go to Canes games. So
Okay.
anyway, yeah. So I just told them a little bit about me, and they thought that was cool. And before I left, the owner of the farm was like, "Hey, so I mean, no pressure, but I know you're saying that you're looking for what God's going to lead you to do. Just know that if you need a place to stay, you got a place here." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I left because I don't know, I just left. And anyway, I remember calling my dad and talking to him, like, what do you think about this? Because we still didn't have a great dynamic, but he was a sounding board for me at times. And I remember it was 1 a.m., man. I had driven myself out to South Point Mall, and I went to see a movie. I think it was one of the Ant-Man movies, Ant-Man and the Wasp or something. And my dad was like, "Just give it a shot." So I said, "Whatever." So I texted the guy and said, "Hey, sorry. If it's cool, I'm going to come over." And he's like, "I'll leave the door unlocked." So I lived and worked there for about 3 years. And that's where I got my love for horses. And honestly, that's where I really came to, get a grip on my country, Southern roots, which I've come to love. I used to make fun of country people growing up, and I was just a jerk. But anyway, and I haven't lost my train of thought. I'm just trying to think of where else to go with it. I guess I'll just bring it up to, this point in time, exactly where I am right here, right now. This is where I get to introduce my beautiful wife into the picture. So I had a couple bad relationships with a couple different ladies. Mostly just I was ready to settle down, and they just weren't that intense about it. It wasn't awkward. It's not like I, proposed to him the second day or anything, nerdy like that. It was just, they picked up pretty quickly that I was more interested in what it was going to be and less in what it was at that exact moment. I didn't want to do the whole dating thing. It's like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with dating.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I was more interested in.
You're ready to find a partner. You're
Yeah,
ready.
man.
You're ready to.
Because just to be totally translucent, when I met the Lord and I started catching feelings for women, I was like, "No, sir. I've already tried to do this thing before. It's already hard enough to follow you, God. I make it complicated enough, so I don't need to add a woman into the mix."
Right.
But anyway, just prayerfully, the Lord made it clear to me that He was like, "No, like I do want you to be married. I do have a future for you as a husband, and that's how you're going to impact people is through your family. So, lovingly, shut up."
Yeah.
So anyway. Yeah, man, through those bad relationships, I got pissed. The second one, I was pissed for like 5 months. Just, I grew my hair out, except it wasn't like this. I grew it out. I had it over my eyes. Like, it was just evident that I was mad at the world. And so anyway, I told God, I said, "If you want me to be with someone, you're going to have to bring them to me." That was my attitude. Because I was just fed up with it, man.
Yeah.
Like, I had gotten to the point where, thankfully, I was bold. I didn't have any trouble, on the one silly side. I didn't have any trouble flirting. I was super flirtatious in an appropriate way. I had no problem complimenting people. I had no problem having a good time. And at the same time, I didn't have a problem showing a bit of chivalry either. And so it's like, man, why am I putting in this effort? And so anyway, enter Emma. I went on a trail ride. I had been going on this trail ride for a few years. This cowboy named Jeff Harris. He's a character and a half. But he had introduced me to it. He thought I wasn't worth 2 cents in a bucket. And then he saw that I could actually break horses, or gentle them or whatever people want to call it. I trained horses. And he said, "Hey, you might be a little bit more of a cowboy than I thought." And so he invited me on this trail ride. I went with him, and I continued that tradition. So to make a very long story as short as possible, 2020, yes, it was actually only the second time that I went on that trail ride. I took the boys that helped to work that farm. The man that I used to live with was a piano teacher as well, and some of the families, it was more economical for them to send their kids to have like a farm day as opposed to paying for the piano lessons, because he's good. The man's good. He can tickle the fire out of some ivories. But anyway, I took them with me on that trail ride, and I saw Emma and I said, "Dadgummit." And but again, man, my attitude was, "Nope, I ain't playing these games. Lord, you know what I said." And so anyway, I just turned back to what I was doing. And I was dolled up in my cowboy hat. I looked as cowboy as it gets, Bo, and I am a cowboy. So anyway, all of a sudden I see this big old, I guess I don't know what the proper term is. I'm a cowboy. I'm not really an equestrian, unfortunately.
Right.
Actually, I'm just kind of dumb when it comes to the technical stuff. But anyway, it was like this cream-colored horse that come up right next to my head, and internally I went, I know who this is. And so anyway, Emma goes, "Hey," and she loves this part. I'm going to make fun of her a little bit. She goes, "Hey," I don't remember the exact sequence. "My name's Emma." She complimented my horse at some point, and I went, "The pleasure's mine." And she went, like, visibly, she kind of melted a little bit. And I won't try to do nothing. I just, I had become inherently a little bit slick.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Did you get a little bit deeper voice when you said it too? You tipped
No.
the cap?
No, man. I wasn't trying to put on any airs. I know you are. I was just chilling. And, yeah, man. And that was it. I mean, I was dead set on not trying to, that was it. The rest is history, that part. But no, literally, that was it. She left, and then I was like, all right.
Yeah.
And so now, faith-wise, internally, I'm like, if you got something you want to happen, it's going to happen. Because I just was done pursuing that dynamic, man. We all know how it is. It's tough. And when you find the right one, it's worth it. But it's tough until you do. And so anyway, we kind of, she was playing around with her horse in a big old mud puddle at one point, and she was like, "Come on." And I was like, "Fine." So I ran up in the mud puddle, and we ran around, and then, again, she went off, and I did my thing, and then, again, we caught each other at a certain point. And the boys that I was with, so I'm 27 at this time. These are like 10, 11, 16-year-olds that I'm with. They're very young, and so they're just picking on me the whole time, like, "Ooh."
Yeah, right.
So anyway, long story short with Emma, we and now's an appropriate time to tie this back in. So, I asked the Lord to give me a reason to live, and this is I am doting on her a little bit, but this is significant to me for more than just being cute, because if I could, selfishly want anything out of this podcast, if anybody could take anything from it at all, it's that God listens to our hearts. Like, the things that we desire are significant to Him, and if it's good, in some capacity, it's His will for it to happen. And in some capacity, He gave that desire to us. Because I prayed for a reason to live, and I swear on everything I know, I'm married to it. I needed, if we go back to the beginning of this conversation, what was I talking about? I needed to find people so I could find an identity. And obviously, it's not good to have your identity rooted in anybody, especially not your spouse, because there's going to be constant struggles there. It's not always going to be bad. That's not what I'm saying. But, marriage is an uphill team effort. But at the same time, I just gravitate naturally towards people. I have always wanted to make a difference in people's lives. It's in my DNA. And so, in fact, just being totally transparent, my prayer, if I was to have a wife, was this. I prayed, Lord, I pray for a woman who's younger than me, who I can help with my life experience. That was it. And, okay, I'm no angel. I was like, and I'd like for her to be beautiful. So I got both.
Right.
I got both.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, man. So I guess just a little bit of humor. The way that ended was, so we get to the end. I mean, I was not trying to play it cool, but I was. I wasn't trying to play it cool. I just was playing it cool because I was not going to. And in all seriousness, now I'm just talking to talk. But in all seriousness, what it really was, and this is still to this day this way, except I feel like the Holy Spirit has given me a little bit more internal freedom to not necessarily wait for things to happen, and just, again, I've been going through this season in the last couple of years of things that were interests to me as a child being restored to me. And, whether that was working at the dealership, I forgot that I love cars. I know that sounds stupid, but I used to watch YouTube videos of diesel trucks drag racing. And I used to love the early 2000s Mustangs. So just these things that, to put it to the word that you said earlier, not by coincidence, are making their way back into my life. Like I worked at the dealership because I was tired of not having a job at the end of last year. I did heavy equipment work for, well, the end of 2021. I did heavy equipment work for a little bit. That guy was retiring, so I got out of that, tried to be, in the veterinary animal world for about 3 months. And then one day, she was supportive of me the whole time, but one day Emma was like, because I was starting to gripe and moan and say, I need a job. She said, well, have you thought about applying here? And I said, fine, I'll do it. And so I didn't go, oh, I like cars. And then with this whole, recent foray that I believe the Lord is blessing into, software sales and long-term software engineering. Like I used to program stuff as a kid. I used to program little games. So these things that used to be a core part of my identity that I threw away because I didn't think it was cool enough, he's been given back to me. And so I guess that's a bit too much of a tangent because I can't quite remember where I was going with that, but I'll just get back onto the whole Emma thing. So, no, I remember what it was. I just have not wanted my influence, if this makes sense, to be the catalyst for anything happening in my life. And what I mean is I really wanted God to be a part of my life. So I didn't want to do something that I could do and then call it God. And so that, to your point, I was ready to settle down or ready to have a wife, however we want to put it. And so I didn't want to just flirt good with some girl and then we end up liking each other. And now, it's not as significant as I wanted it to be, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does or not. Yeah. But basically, if God wanted me to have a wife, I wanted God to give me that wife. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't, lie to myself into thinking, well, this is the one, when it wasn't. Now she is, and I'm glad. But all that to say, I did all this talking, and now the joke's not even going to be funny. We were all sitting around eating. We had gotten to the end of the day. I found her, and I wasn't going to be rude. And this one dude that was with, the group that she was with, it was actually the boyfriend of the girl's horse that she had borrowed, goes, you going to get her number? And I went, I'm working on it. And so anyway, I left Emma my number, and I said, get up with me if you'd like to. And I was waiting to hear back from her in a week. She wasted no time. She called me that night.
Oh, nice.
Nice. And so anyway, at that point, I can happily say the rest is history. And yeah, man, I still have this burning, and I think our conversation, at least thus far, has helped to reignite this in me, but I just still have this burning urge. And not everybody's going to want it, and that sucks. The first people that I had to experience not wanting it were my family. I was like, I was suicidal and addicted to drugs, and now I'm happy. They're all going to want this, right? No, they didn't. My family's not on the same page with me as Jesus. My dad's the closest one, and his relationship with God is very different from mine. And then the rest of my family, some of them entertain the idea of there being a God, and some of them flat out don't. And then some of them, the only person left is my mom. She, has her own approach to these matters. So there just was not that, we'll all do it that I had hoped for. And hopefully there will be from this, and there won't in some instances from this. But my heart, man, is just, I just want everybody to have what I do, dude. I know that sounds cliche, and I know it sounds stupid, but if everybody could just step into the shoes that I was in when I was in my teen years, and then just take a look at me for half a second, like, God, I just want everybody to have this. So I'm a very content, happy person these days, but I still have this burning urge in my heart to change the world. And the only thing that supersedes that is doing my best to be a good husband to Emma.
Very good.
So, yep, I'm Steven.
Very good. A quick question I wanted to ask. Do you think, dude, I would love to have another podcast with you and talk about like religion for a little bit, because I could go on a whole thing. I could ask a lot of questions, like a lot of things.
Happily, and for what it's worth, I'll speak from experience, but I also thankfully do have that degree in theology, so I can come at it from a historical perspective too.
Nice. Do you think you mentioned the whole podcast, you were talking about being a man.
Okay.
And then you also talked about, you wanted something to live for. Do you think sometimes, responsibility, being a man, is what you need to kind of thrive?
As a personally, man? Is that the question? Or are we talking about men in general?
I'm thinking about in general. Because you keep talking about men in general. Men, I want to be a man, and that's a general statement. And then you mentioned, like, Emma's given me this void of life to where I feel like, yes, I'm responsible for something. So do you feel like something to that?
I'd love to speak to that. I'll speak to it generally, and then more specifically. I don't really have an answer for it generally, because I'm not all men, and quite frankly, I was not raised by one. My dad didn't know what it meant to be a man when he was my father. So I didn't have that lens to look through, and I don't want to make this about men versus women and misogynistic, and I'm sensitive to all those conversations that are going on in society. I'm not a jackleg. I don't just drown that out and go, Jesus is right and you're wrong. That's not my approach. But at the same time, I don't know. What I do know is this, that you can go, again, my life has had a lot of extremes in it, and you can go to the opposite extreme. You can be crushed by not feeling like you're enough of a man, and perhaps responsibility is one of those things. Like, I think it has more to do with, in a general sense, what one associates being a man with. So perhaps it's their father, or perhaps it's just this concept or idea that they have, or perhaps it's, some celebrity. And if that's what they equate being a man or being a woman to, and they feel like they don't live up to that, okay, perhaps. And whether that has to do with responsibility directly or not, could. For me personally, and I want to be clear, Emma does not give me my identity.
For sure.
And I'm not saying that derogatorily. Emma is exactly what I need in a woman. And I hope that I'm half of what she needs in a man. But what God putting Emma in my life, and what Emma continuing to be in my life by her choice has done for me, is I just have these instinctual desires to help people. And I mean, that's literally why I prayed, Lord, I pray that you would give me someone that's a little bit younger than me, that I can help from my life experience. Like, one of my favorite things to do in the life that Emma and I have lived together for now going on 3 years, it's had its trials, and not really with each other, just kind of from external sources, has been being able to look back on the last 10 years of my life and be able to, I hope in some measure, assuage her fears, or assuage her concerns about, well, what about this, or what if that doesn't happen? So for me personally, what having a companion such as my wife does for me is it gives me a sense of purpose, in that I am just dying inside to make a difference in people's lives. One of my other first prayers to the Lord was something verbatim like this: God, I pray that you will put me in people's lives, that if I wasn't in their lives, then they would have been significantly different. So in other words, make me the catalyst for change in people's lives. That was my heart. Like, it's just in my DNA, man. My mom used to get on me for it. She's like, you can't change people. And that was when I was young. I'm not trying to change anybody. I just want the experiences that I have to contribute to somebody's life in such a way that they leave changed from it. So no, me personally, I wouldn't say that it was a void of responsibility. No. I think I juggle responsibility actually very well, especially at this season of my life. Yeah. No, for me, it's just more of a sense of, I love that I can make a commit. I love that I can make a commitment to Emma. And I started to jokingly say it earlier. I really am a glutton for punishment when it comes to challenges. It's one of the most, dogged things about me, and it can be one of my worst enemies. I have a very hot-headed temper, which I don't brag about, and I love a challenge. Like, I thrive on competition, and so. It's been tested many times, but I love just being able to look at Emma and in my heart really want to make this commitment to her of, regardless of what we go through, I will do everything I can to get you through it. That's the sense of purpose that having Emma in my life brings me. Is it's going back to your point, having a partner. I love being able to, if I was going to have a wife, I wanted it to be someone that I could do life with.
Yeah.
And just go on an adventure together and knock it out the park. Because we mutually complement each other. Not because I'm like, come on, honey, get on my back. I'll do all the work. No, I need Emma. For God sure. knows I need Emma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good deal. We'll wrap up there.
Okay.
That sums up the
cool
episode 1. Hopefully we have some more. And
I'd be happy to.
There's some challenges.
We can name it God Knows He Needs Emma.
And Drina, if you want to record us do a speed round, we'll finish up. I'll see if I can come up with 10 questions.
I wish you would, man.
It's just it's quick, rapid fire.
I'll answer them quick. I won't give you long-winded.
Right. Huh? Oh, my bad.
Well, we'll have to do a couples podcast in the future.
Hey, I gotta get more mics, right? All right, you ready? All right, speed round. Stephen Deyoung. Here we go. Favorite Bible verse.
The most significant one is the one that stood out to me first, Proverbs 3:5-6. it gets translated different ways, but basically, do not lean on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. That was the first verse that really kind of gripped onto my heart and started to change the trajectory of my life. So
Very good. Favorite exercise?
yes, sir. I don't have one. I just love lifting. I really do.
Yeah.
I love
Well,
squatting. I love benching.
Oh, okay.
I guess if I had to pick, I'd pick squatting
Right.
because like I'm a little bit better at it than I might have thought that I would be.
Gotcha.
So
biggest goal in 5 years?
yeah, man. From now, God knows. Get my act together.
Okay.
I don't know, man. Stability
Stability.
for my wife and my family and our plans. And if we have a little one in the next 5 years, I won't be upset.
All right. Favorite car of all time?
Yeah, man. Lamborghini. Without a doubt, just the brand itself. I mean, I'm a big fan of classic Lambos, but also I love the Huracan. Yeah, man. But I could go on and on about cars. But yeah, Lambo's kind of like,
yeah,
I want it.
Favorite dish from the restaurant you worked at? What was it called? Oh, Charlie? Was it
Charlie's Kebab Grill? Yeah.
Favorite dish?
That's tough, man, because I would just make whatever I wanted. Charlie and his business is really what taught me how to eat in general. I guess if I had to pick one, the lamb kebabs were really good because I learned that I like leg of lamb.
I got you.
Yes, sir.
Dream vacation spot?
Ooh. Well, I've had the privilege of being out of the country twice. I've gone to Bulgaria and Quebec. I just want to travel, so I don't know. I guess Japan. I learned Arabic while I was at Charlie's Kebab Grill, so I can speak relatively fluent Arabic. I love languages. I've attempted to learn Japanese and whatnot, and I'd like to continue that. And in some capacity, I can appreciate anime and whatnot as a form of art, and game design's pretty cool. So, yeah, I reckon Japan.
Last question. I don't know if it's 10 or not.
That's
but
6, bro.
It is. Look at you go. Guilty pleasure.
Unhealthy one is eating.
Oh, here we go. I got some more.
I'm getting better at that one. I've gotten better at it right now.
Eating what?
Just eating.
Okay.
I love food now, man. There's nothing that I won't eat. Really, there's nothing that I won't eat. And, people can challenge me on that. I've eaten cow tongue in a foreign country, so come at me.
Nice.
Okay, go ahead.
Favorite memory with Emma besides getting married in your first date or your first time you met?
Ah!
Oof.
You trying to get me sleeping on the couch?
Yeah, I am.
She's gonna be like, "Why didn't you say that one?"
Yeah.
Oh God, what's my favorite?
The clock's
memory?
ticking, tick, 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 tick.
This is gonna seem so nerdy, man.
No, it's all good. Yeah.
But nobody's ever asked me that question, so this is honestly the first. Like Emma and Mai's relationship and adventure in life together has been a wild run. Just very fast, a lot of change, consistently just a lot of adapting in both of our lives for one reason or another, some good, some bad. But honestly, she might laugh at me for this. I'm sure she will. But the first day that she ever came over to that house that I was living at, the farm, which was like the day after we met or something, I think, right before she left, I kissed her on the cheek. And that took some gall at the time.
Hey, there you go.
That's a stupid one, but I don't really know, man. I love every minute that I spend with that woman, I swear.
Look at you go. Last thing, I don't know, maybe favorite piece of clothing.
I like fashion in general. Refine that question. What do you mean?
It could be like, for instance,
I'm not necessarily
a jacket you wear, or is it
so one that I own?
A pair of shoes?
I love a cowboy hat. We'll go with a cowboy hat.
Cowboy hat. I'm done. That's it. Stephen Deyoung, guys. That was good, man.